So, hi, Dr. Virali. Thank you for taking time out for us today. So, you are a pediatric dentist and an IBCLC also, which is like the gold standard in lactation consulting. So, tell us more about yourself, and then we'll get going into understanding how does oral anatomy impact breastfeeding and how does it happen vice versa.
Right. Thank you so much for your kind introduction. So, when I say I'm a pediatric dentist, which means that I deal with teeth of kids, that is from 0 to up to 18 years of age. And with respect to lactation consultants, I deal with problems of that mothers face during the feeding, the early phases when the baby is born, the feeding issues, and all of that. So, yeah, I pretty much deal from 0 to 18.
I remember I had referred a mother once to you, and you look at
Yes.
the mother in a 360-degree profile, and you understood that it's just not oral anatomy of the child, but also her hormonal changes that probably would have impacted milk supply. And so it's great that we look at it in a 360-degree view rather than just focusing on one single aspect. So let's shoot with the questions first. How does breastfeeding impact the oral anatomy of a child? Because we have learned that there are multiple muscles that are involved. But could you just talk us through the importance of breastfeeding for development of oral anatomy of a child?
So, breastfeeding, one part of it is obviously nutrition and all of that. So, when a mother is feeding through the breast, the child has to feed actively. Basically, the child has to take a lot of effort in feeding. When I say effort, I don't just mean कि बच्चे को मेहनत करना पड़ता है. It's not like that. But the child is utilizing a lot of face muscles in doing that. So the muscles mainly which are used is when the child latches onto the breast. The first muscles which is used is the clip muscles. It's called the orbicularis. After that, the child has to move the tongue in a wave-like fashion to extract the milk from the breast. So the entire tongue muscle is used. And at the same time, breast as itself is a very pliable object, means it can be molded quite easily by the tongue. Whereas on the contrary, if a child is bottle fed, the nipple is quite stiff. So a child is not able to mold that as well with the tongue. In fact, we say that breastfeeding, the child can rest the tongue onto the roof of the mouth. So when the tongue is continuously resting onto the roof of the mouth, it molds our jaws. But with respect to bottle, the bottle pushes the tongue of the child down. So which is why it is unable to mold its upper jaw. So when I say my tongue is, I just want to show it to you. When I say my tongue is resting onto the roof of the mouth, it's something like this. Where my entire tongue, so when the child is feeding, the entire tongue is molding the upper jaw, which allows the jaws to grow really well.
Yeah,
so
that's very
I
interesting
feel
to know.
Breastfeeding, it's like the first exercise that you could, like when a baby is born, they do a lot of hand exercise, tummy time is done, and then when Malish Wali will come and do millions exercise for the baby. This is the most easiest and a natural form of exercise that any child would do.
Okay. What are the other differences? So you talked about the tongue, right? What are the other differences between breastfeeding versus bottle feeding in terms of the oral movement of the, the movement of the muscles in the mouth?
Also the cheek muscles with respect to breastfeeding, a child would, the balance between the cheek muscles and the tongue muscles is always maintained. With respect to breastfeeding. However, with respect to bottle feeding, the milk is flowing on its own, right? The baby is not taking any effort. So the baby is not going to put efforts on the cheek muscles at all. So a cheek muscles is another muscle that play a really important role in that.
Okay, and we do paced bottle feeding, right? So that the child can easily switch between breast and bottle. Does that have a similar effect on the oral anatomy? Like, because the child is still sucking on the bottle.
Correct. The child is still sucking on the bottle, but again, I feel it is still going to lay the tongue of the child really low because again, even though we are allowing the child to do the movements, but because of the nature of the bottle, so even with respect to wide mouth bottles that we get,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
child will be able to open wide like they would do with respect to breastfeeding. However, the nature of the nipple is such in with respect to bottle feeding that the tongue is pushed downwards
Down.
and it won't be able to
Hmm.
rest onto the roof of the mouth.
Got it. Yeah, that I think that, and that must be helping shaping the palate as well, right? So like you said, the upper jaw
Palate,
and the
yes,
palate as well.
yes. The
Yeah.
upper jaw,
Oh,
I mean the
the
palate, yeah.
palate as well. Yeah.
So, usually, with respect to growth, there are two parts of this. One part is genetic, obviously. That is something
Hmm.
that we can't control, right? If the
Yeah.
parent has like a genetic issue, then obviously, like some amount can be transferred to the child. But
Right.
the function part of it is another thing that molds our jaws. So, the function is what we can really take care.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I
Okay.
think breastfeeding is what improves the function of it in like rather than like at least what is in our hands we can do, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I think that is a significant difference that you highlighted from with respect to bottle feeding, and in fact, even paced bottle feeding, because of the way the tongue is rested on the roof of the mouth
Correct.
versus downwards.